Revolution. The Industrial Revolution roared along from 1750 to 1850, fueled by anthracite, the hardest type of coal. In the 19th century, large-scale coal mining developed, and coal provided the most important source of energy for industry and transportation. In addition, a domestic use of coal was popularized during this period when it was discovered that families could use anthracite to heat their homes. Coal served not only as a heating fuel, but also as a cheap and efficient source of power for furnaces, steam engines, and forges across the United States. Regardless of the use, industrial or domestic, northeastern Pennsylvania coal regions provided that coal. One of the most important collieries in the area was the Avondale colliery. It was known as the finest in the valley, but was also the site of one of the worst mine disasters ever recorded. The Avondale colliery, although previously owned by various companies, was owned and operated during the time of the disaster in 1869 by the Nanticoke Coal and Iron Company, a subsidiary of the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad, or DL&W. The Avondale colliery, built in 1857, possessed only one means of egress, a 237-foot shaft that was constructed primarily of a wooden frame that enabled the workers to descend and ascend in a cage that was hoisted up and down. The colliery, built directly above the shaft, was able to process 700 to 900 tons of prepared anthracite daily. The mine was ventilated by a furnace and flue located at the bottom of the shaft, precisely 129 feet away from the shaft. On September 6, 1869, just 4 days after the mine reopened from a strike that went on from May 10th to September 2nd, one of the greatest mining calamities of all time occurred in the small town of Avondale, located in northeastern Pennsylvania's Plymouth Township. At approximately 10 a.m., the wooden beams and plank lining the shaft of the Avondale colliery were set on fire by sparks from the ventilating furnace. According to an account of the disaster by Andrew Roy in his book entitled The Coal Mines, the flames quickly made the shaft unapproachable, as the whole of the immense wooden structures covering and surrounding the shaft was soon one vast volume of lurid flame, which rose for 100 feet and upward in the air and swayed to and fro by the wind, formed a scene once grand and terrific, while great volumes of smoke filled the air. Reaction. Fire engines came from surrounding areas, including Kingston, Wilkes-Barre, and Scranton. They doused the fire until it was under control around 5 o'clock in the evening. Debris from the shaft and burnt colliery obstructed early rescue attempts. Once it was cleared, a dog was first sent down in a crate with a lit lantern. Upon safe return of the dog and the lit lantern, indicating breathable air, it was decided that Charles Varchi would descend and attempt to locate survivors. His progress was stopped on more than one occasion, again because of the debris. Once debris was cleared by additional volunteers, two brave men, Thomas W. Williams and David Jones, made the fateful decision to go down into the mine. After reaching the bottom of the shaft, the two gave a signal for a pick and a shovel to be sent down to them. They were never heard from again. Tragically, both were later found dead, apparently asphyxiated. Once they could do so safely, rescuers continued to recover the miners' lifeless bodies throughout the night and bring them to the surface. Having claimed the lives of 110 men, 69 Welsh, and 15 Irish, the Avondale mine disaster was a devastating occurrence. The reactions to this horrifying event were piteous, yet constructive. The issue of mine safety made its way, although gruesomely, into the public's eye. There are several theories that surround the cause of the fire that range from negligence to accident to arson. It is worth noting that various researchers over the years have attempted to disprove the widely accepted accident theory in favor of the arson theory, while the negligence theory was developed immediately following the tragedy as a means to bring about reform. The arson theory takes into account the problems with the circumstantial evidence, such as the fire having to jump 129 feet, the lack of charred wood within the middle portion of the mine shaft, and the turbulent relations between the various ethnic groups, primarily between Irish and Welsh miners. Because of their previous mining experience in Europe, the Welsh held better jobs as miners. The Irish, however, were laborers and received 1/3 of the day's pay, even though they did far harder work than the miner. Also supporting the arson theory is the fact that 90 Irish men and boys did not attend work on that fateful day. They were reportedly attending a funeral that the Welsh were not invited to. The first reaction to the Avondale mine disaster was the sudden stop of coal production from the Avondale colliery. Monetary damage to the colliery approximated $100,000. After the disaster, mining could not be resumed at any of the D&W Company's mines until all of the funerals for the deceased miners were over. Meanwhile, miners from all over came to see the damage done to the colliery and to offer help to the grieving families left behind. The reaction of the families was heart-wrenching. Illustrated by intense suffering and impending poverty, the 73 widowed women and 158 fatherless children were at the center of attention in the region as well as in the country. There was a call for help. Help came. In Pittsburgh, stores closed 2 days after the disaster so as a meeting could be held to determine what families could benefit from most. A relief fund was established. Money was collected from a New York Board of Brokers, from Asa Packer, a local philanthropist, and from Pennsylvania's governor at the time, Governor Geary, who later sponsored a bill that resulted in greater mine safety. On October 1st, 1869, the first check of $155,825.10 collected for the families was distributed. The safety of all coal miners was now in the limelight. Reform. Most important was the reform that the mining industry underwent as a result of the Avondale mine disaster. There was a coroner's inquest to determine the cause of death of the disaster victims. Also during this inquest, the Mine Safety Act, which had been passed in Schuylkill County prior to the disaster, would be discussed. This act became a law on a trial basis on April 12, 1869, but ironically did not apply to mines in Luzerne County. The act codified ventilation requirements and stipulated the presence of a second entrance. Representatives from the Working Men's Benevolent Association, which had petitioned the Pennsylvania state legislature for the passage of the Mine Safety Act on behalf of their largely coal miner membership, were present at this inquest held in Ship's Hall in Plymouth, PA. Miners, foremen, mining experts, union representatives, and the D&W mine owners were present and testified. It was often a heated debate. After 4 days of testimony and deliberation, the jury regarded the then-present system of mining by shaft as unsecure and unsafe to the miner, and would strongly recommend, in all cases where practical, 2 places for ingress and egress and a more practical means of ventilation, thereby rendering greater security to the life of the miner under any similar accident. In addition, in 1870, the mine safety law applying to all anthracite mines was passed. Each mine was now required to have 2 entrances. Mine owners had 4 months to upgrade their mines by adding a second entrance. Breakers and engines had to be a safe distance from the shaft. Also, ventilation fans were now mandatory to prevent unsafe air from building up. Children under 12 were no longer allowed to work underground in the mines, and the hoisting engine could only be operated by a skilled engineer. Miners could no longer ride on coal cars, refuse to support the mining chamber roofs with timbers, or engage in any behavior considered dangerous while in the mines. Additionally, mining companies needed to put in some type of metal tubing to assure that there would be communication between the miners and those on the surface. Lastly, they needed to produce a precise map of the mines. In conclusion, the tragedy of the Avondale mine disaster during the Industrial Revolution caused reactions of outrage which brought about reform. The connection between the ideas of revolution, reaction, and reform are best summed up by the words of John Siney, the head of the Working Men's Benevolent Association, who, upon the recovery of the 110 deceased miners, climbed atop a wagon and declared to the concerned crowd, "Men, if you must die with your boots on, die for your families, your homes, your country. But do no longer consent to die like rats in a trap for those who have no more interest in you than in the pick you dig with."
But little did they think